Rabbi, Rashi comments on Daniel and he says he's commenting on the verses again and he says, anoint upon them the Holy of Holies, the ark, the altars, and the holy vessels, which they will bring to them through the king Mashiach in Daniel 9:24. And his hand will be damnation and destruction, and for he will be innovate the power of his kingdom through the Messiah, Mashiach, in Daniel 9:26. And the other next verse, and he says the ruling of abomination will endure until the day of the destruction, and extermination decreed upon it will befall it in the days of the king Mashiach, in 9:27. Do these words of Rashi mean that the Mashiach should have come before the destruction of the second temple? Because we have a lot of questions coming in this way. Would you please enlighten us?
Yeah, of course, my pleasure. It's really in the text. Rashi is just sharing what's going on. If I don't explain the context, no one is going to understand anything we're talking about. In Daniel 9, from verse 1, Daniel is standing in the first year of Darius the Mede, who will soon be followed by Cyrus the Great. The key point is that Daniel is shocked. This is the context. After this, you want to understand it. And Daniel does not understand two prophecies in the book of Jeremiah, and you can see that in the first two passages of Daniel 9. Just, you need to know this. If Darius the Mede is now king, that means the Babylonian Empire has just collapsed, right? But what has not occurred is the Jews have not returned back to the land. So imagine you're standing in Babylon, southern Mesopotamia. You see one prophecy unfold, Jeremiah 25, verse 12, which means that the Babylonian Empire after 70 years, or the Neo-Babylonian Empire after 70 years, collapses. But the other prophecy of Jeremiah 29, verse 10, where it says, and the word will be fulfilled when the Jews will return back to the land after 70 years. And he's going, but there's nothing happening, okay? That's just the context. So an angel, it responds to an elaborate prayer of Daniel. So from verse 3 all the way through verse 21, Daniel is supplicating, pleading with God for an explanation, and he's very afraid of something. He's very frightened that the prophecy that the Jews would return after 70 years was not canceled but delayed because of a curse in Leviticus 26:18, where it says that if you continue to sin, I'll multiply your punishment 7 times. And Daniel is petrified of this, and he's terrified of this curse of the law. This is the chapter of the blessings and the curse. Everyone needs to know this The angel Gabriel is sent to Daniel, who's a holy man, and he's told that God loves you. You are beloved by the Almighty. Only person in Tanakh who's called that way. And Gabriel is speaking here. That's what you have to understand. The angel Gabriel is about to bring into view Jewish history, beginning with the destruction of the first temple. So the Babylonian exile was 70 years. The second temple stood for 420 years. So 420 plus 70 is 490 years. And also for the viewers to understand that in this context, a day is a year, and a week, therefore, is 7 years, and 70 weeks is therefore 490 years. Why does the angel use a day as a year? It's not germane to this, but this is something that's not controversial. She's talking about 490 years. And what will happen after the 490 years? So that's when the temple is destroyed, the service of the priesthood is cut off, is removed, and then the Mashiach can come. Remember, what the Messiah is supposed to do is rebuild the temple. That's one of the things that the Messiah will do. As an example, in Ezekiel 37, verse 24 and 25, That's the Messiah. He's called the Prince, David, right? And following that, 26, 27, 28, describes the temple. So one of the things the Messiah must do is rebuild the temple. Well, therefore, the Messiah can't come while the temple is standing. And I hope every Christian pays attention to that. The last 9 chapters of Ezekiel, from 40 through 48, are a description of the unused blueprints of the Messianic temple, the third temple, which is soon to be rebuilt. Please God. So the key is, what we are told here is that after these 70 weeks, this is what will be fulfilled. And I want to encourage the viewers to read verse 24. Just read it in context. 70 weeks are decreed for your people and for your holy city, and to do 6 things: to finish transgression. So when the Mashiach comes, sin, when I say sin, I mean rebellion. It doesn't mean unintentional sins. People will still make mistakes in the Messianic age, but rebellion will come to an end. What else will happen? There will be no more sin. All iniquities will be forgiven. There'll be everlasting righteousness, a seal for the vision and prophet. That means all the prophecies will be fulfilled, and to anoint the most holy, the Holy of Holies, okay? Now, if this is, for a moment, speaking about the Messiah, and that's what Rashi is saying here. Rashi is simply explaining that at the end, after the culmination of these 490 years, again, starting from the destruction of the first temple, for those of you who are history buffs, the first temple was destroyed 50 years before Cyrus. So from the time Nebuchadnezzar, the king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, destroyed the first temple until Cyrus the Great, the Persian, is 50 years, or really 7 weeks of years have passed. Okay? It's very simple. But once this full cycle has been completed, Jerusalem rebuilt, street and moat, but in troublous times. I'm giving you the short version, but it's all in the text. Once all of that's complete, and then there's a war, and the people of the prince, read the text, that's Rome, comes down. And what do? They destroyed the sanctuary. They destroyed the temple. There are many academics who say they have a big problem with this, because how could Daniel know anything about the destruction of the second temple? So they say that's Hanukkah, a defilement to the temple. But it's not. It's talking about the destruction of the temple. Once the temple is destroyed, then the Messianic age can begin. And we are told in verse 24, so you don't really need Rashi. Rashi is simply commenting on all this, that all this destruction must occur, building of the second temple, destroying of the second temple. There are 2 anointed ones that come into view. I know people will ask that question. The first anointed one is a prince, a Nogid, that's Cyrus, Isaiah 45, verse 1, who gives the command to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem, right? And then you have 62 weeks, 434 years. The last week is divided to 2 parts, because what happens 3.5 years? 3.5 years is a half a week, right? 3.5 years is a half a week. So 3.5 years prior to the destruction of the second temple. When was the second temple destroyed? By Titus, in the year 70. When did the war with Rome begin? In the year 66. That's 3.5 years. So what happens is the priesthood comes to an end. Now, when it says the priest or the anointed, or it's really an anointed cut off, it means the priesthood is cut off. So people are going to ask this, and it's very important that I mention this. I'm a priest, which means my great-great-grandfather was Aharon, the brother of Moses of blessed memory. Okay? Now, although I'm a priest, and that guides elements of my life. I can't go into a cemetery. I can't come into contact with the dead. I can't marry a divorcee. But I can't also bring offerings. I can't go into the temple now and perform the sacred rites that are reserved for my family. So the priesthood is cut off. The Christian Bibles are going to conflate these 2 anointed ones, going to call it a Messiah, put a definite article in and capitalize it. And people, poor Christians around the world, are relying on the King James Bible, will never pick this all up. But I want to answer your question directly. Once the second temple is destroyed in the year 70, it occurred on the 9th day of the 5th month in the year 70. At that moment, the Messiah can come. In fact, there's a tradition that on the day that the temple was destroyed, the Messiah was born. It doesn't mean literally he was born that day. That means the moment the temple is destroyed, the kinetic potential for Mashiach is here.
Let me begin by citing a passage not from the Old Testament, but from the Talmud. The Talmud says, at the time when the temple was destroyed, the Messiah was born. What an extraordinary statement. The temple was destroyed about 1200 years ago, round about the time of the beginning of Christianity. Now let me put the question directly to Rabbi Moses. Why are the Jews waiting for the Messiah when their own Talmud tells them that he came 1200 years ago?
What do you have to say to this, Rabbi Moses?
Your Majesty, with respect to Brother Pablo, the Talmud does not say that the Messiah came at the time of the destruction of the temple. It only says he was born then. It is poetry, a parable. You Christians know what parables are. It's a way of saying that hope is born in the very depths of despair. Should not be taken literally.
Are you saying that the Talmud is telling lies?
A parable is not a lie.
What are the signs of the Messiah? It's really outlined in verse 24. And most critically, all prophecies are fulfilled. Sin comes to an end. Finished. Rebellion against God is no more. So if these are the signs of the Messiah, that means if I grant the Christians everything, all your work is ahead of you. There could be no greater proof that Jesus is not the Messiah. Why? Because sin not only did not come to an end, but from what I can tell, looking around at the world we now live in, Satan is doing fabulously. Sin is all over the world as we've never seen it in our lifetime right now. So if I concede everything, that means Jesus can't be the Messiah, because those 6 signs of the Messianic age, which essentially means that the whole world knows the truth, sin comes to an end, rebellion comes to an end, and all Messianic prophecy is fulfilled. That's what the text says. That's all Rashi's saying. Rashi is not inventing a new Bible. He's just filling in pieces that you might have missed. That's all. And there can be no greater proof that Christianity or the core tenets of the Christian religion are false than these very passages that missionaries summon routinely in order to bolster their religion. They're actually destroying the religion. If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא ואת נעשה בחפצו כל